A huge thank you to Jeff Holmes for bringing you today's video via Patreon. Go Shintai of Life's Origin versus Go Shintai, Azusa, and Rafiq. And we have a little bit of ramp and a couple of lands, takes us into enchantresses. Pretty much everything that we want here, so we'll certainly keep. Go Shintai shocking in an Overgrown Tomb into a Sol Ring. And we get into more ramp with the Overgrowth, so just a tap land ready for the Fertile Ground. Farseek from Rafiq. Summer Bloom from the Azusa player, getting a bunch of lands into play. So far we're seeing basics, Encroaching Wastes, and they've just played a Jungle Basin as well. Dryad of the Elysian Grove for more lands and some colour fixing as well. And they play a Gaia's Cradle, which can tap for any colours and 1 green per creature they control. Then playing their first shrine, down to only 2 cards in hand, but that is Go Shintai of Boundless Vigour. That's the one that you can pay 1 and put a plus counter on a shrine for each shrine you control. So already falling behind here, although we are the last in the turn order, unfortunately. Then down comes the first commander of the game, Rafiq of the Many, followed by a Mind's Eye from the mono green player. Didn't realise that a Mox Tantalite has been suspended by Go Shintai as well, so should be getting that down in the next couple of turns. Azusa stuck down a Maze of Ith as well, which does not tap for mana for the Mind's Eye, although it will do once we get down the Urborg. Shrine Steward enters, and they search up Sanctum of All. Plus counter goes on the only shrine in play at the end of the turn. And we just so happen to draw into the Sanctum of All ourselves. We'll go for Overgrowth onto the Urborg. I'm hoping no one will blow that up, and that taps for 3, letting us get down the Cetizen Champion. And once again, noteworthy that the Mind's Eye can now tap for mana, like we said, so they did tap it down for black into the Mind's Eye. And we see a Shield of the Oversoul. Very much enjoy playing this in my Garlia list in paper. So now, the Rafiq is a 5/5 with flying and indestructible. Then Staggering Insight on there as well. +1/+1 has lifelink, and when it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Flies straight over everything and into the Sanctum of All player here. So Rafiq jumping up to a 7/7, has double strike as well, so that's going to be 14 commander damage. We'll draw 2 cards as well, thanks to the Staggering Insight. Thrashing Brontodon is going to be able to destroy an artifact or enchantment. Well, that's a nice answer. Cyclonic Rift going on to the Rafiq, so that will knock the indestructible and the flying away from that, as well as the card draw. That's the problem with auras. Then playing out a Skull Clamp. So this is a much different list to the one that we have built here. We've gone typical Enchantress for the card draw. They must be looking at making a lot of tokens to have Skull Clamp in the deck, with something like Hondon of Life's Web, I assume. Curiously not throwing out their commander yet. And we get a Dovin's Veto. I think I'm just going to go in for the Eidolon of Blossoms here. We'll draw 1 from the Cetizen Champion and 1 from the Eidolon. I want to not be missing lands, preferably. We are playing this into the Thrashing Brontodon, of course, but not going to play around that forever. We're in an Enchantress deck, so I dare say that they might hold on to this until they can hit something like a Sanctum of All. Alright, well, don't draw into a land, but we can make 1 with the 3 visits. We can't hold up the Dovin's Veto anyway, so might as well go for this. And we'll grab a Triome that can make blue mana. Drew into Hondon of Night's Reach as well, by the way, so that one is target opponent discards a card per shrine you control at the upkeep. The Hondons are pretty slow, unfortunately. No need for Azusa to keep up the Maze of Ith now either, because the Rafiq certainly isn't going to swing in over there. See a Sphere of Safety now, so we've got 3 Enchantress players at the table. No max hand size from a Reliquary Tower now. Not too much green mana over there, unfortunately for them, but they do play into Azusa, so likely to make a bunch of lands here. We see Petrified Field, and then tapping a bunch of mana into Froz's Ban. So that's going to be relevant with commanders, and some of our shrines, the new ones from Kamigawa, are creatures. So they're going to cost 2 additional here. We now see the Sanctum of All, so that's really good. That means that it might be the Thrashing Brontodon that goes onto the Sanctum of All. Almost have to do that, I suppose, to keep them from getting more abilities with this. And now making it round to our turn, that's really good. I was just working out, I think we need either double white or both red and white. So that gets us halfway there if we want to go for the Ruinous Ultimatum sometime soon, and that will blow up all of our opponent's stuff. Probably wait for Rafiq to come into play again before we do that. So I'll go for the Honden of Life's Web here. It'll be good to get that down here because it is a lot of mana. But I think now that the Sanctum of All is in play, that should draw the ire of the Brontodon more than the Shrine will. We get a Go Shintai of Boundless Vigor of our own. And we get a Sphere of Safety of our own as well. Yeah, I think we just have to hold up the Dovin's Veto and try and protect our board at this point. Although, is anyone really going to go for a board wipe here? Yeah, I think it's just safer to hold up the counterspell, so I will leave it there, I think. Ghostly Prison continuing to set up the Pillow Fort with Rafiq. And a Swiftfoot Boots as well, very much looking to create Voltron on this side of the field, I imagine. Oracle of Muldaya for even more lands from the land player. Garaport Orrery is on top. And yeah, curiously, allowing the Sanctum of All to be activated over here, or to be triggered, so going to be able to get a free shrine. And they go for Honden of Infinite Rage, which does trigger during the upkeep, so don't have to worry about that just yet. Azusa just slowly sitting back and paying into Mind's Eye during every turn cycle. Honden of Seeing Winds, and that is the one that draws cards, so one of the best ones that you can go for. They are on only one card at the moment, so yeah, especially with this thing and starting to get round to the point where it triggers twice, refilling their hand, I was trying to figure out whether we should go for Ruinous Ultimatum or not. If we can do it next turn, then I might go for that. Noteworthy that the Azusa now has Apex Altasaur on top. And this thing is now a 9/9 thanks to all the plus counters being dumped on it. Honden of Life's Web, the first shrine, is going to trigger for us, only getting one spirit out of that though. And still not getting into a land, unfortunately. The Great Aurora now on top, which is a mono-green board wipe, so have to potentially hold up Dovin's Veto for that. We can draw another 2 cards without losing out on any mana for the Ruinous Ultimatum by going for the Boundless Vigor. If we tap this down for black, we get 2 green, which we can't use for the Ultimatum anyway, so might as well try our luck here on getting into another land. Oh, but of course, yeah, I forgot all about the Faraz's ban. So we're not going for the board wipe here, apparently. Let's instead just go for Honden of Night's Reach. I do really want to dodge the Thrashing Brontodon. Otherwise, I would have gone for Sanctum of All here. Drawing some more cards, and now is the point where we'll probably get into lands. Seeing an Arboreal Grazer on the first Mind's Eye, they don't draw into that, so wanting to hold up the Maze of Ith, apparently. We get into yet another Triome, so I'll play the Triome. We'll go up another land with the Nature's Law, and once again hold up the Dovin's Veto. Just make sure the mana is okay for that. Yep. We are at least now in Ruinous Ultimatum range. I was just really trying to get the Ruinous Ultimatum out before we see more Sanctum of All and Seeking Winds, or Seeing Winds triggers. Turns out this is probably going to be a slow and clunky game though, because we're all kind of playing passively. Paying into the Maze's Ith, even though there is a Swiftfoot Boots in play, so yeah, they obviously fancy their odds of not being whacked by the commander. There is Gate to the Ether on top now as well. Don't think it puts these in the revealed zone. No, it should do. If you're showing your cards on the top, it should put them in the reveal zone here, but doesn't, unfortunately. Rafiq of the Many coming back into play, and not holding up any counter magic, they go for the boots onto their commander. Horn of Greed now. Whenever a player plays a land, they draw a card. That is, plays a land as opposed to a land coming into play, which is relevant. Obviously much more beneficial for Azusa, who can play multiple lands a turn. We now see Howling Mine on top as well. And once that's drawn, Nissa, who shakes the world. More stuff being played into a Ruinous Ultimatum at least. It might be that there's a Heroic Intervention over here, unfortunately. Although they have been tapping out every turn. Now a Font of Mythos, so going for the group hug stuff, as we saw with the Howling Mine. And curiously, still going through to the Sanctum player's turn. Yeah, I really don't see why they're holding on to this thing, to be honest. So they're going to get double triggers. The first thing I would point this red Honden at is the Thrashing Brontodon and force it out of play. Luckily, there's only going to be 5 shrines in play after the Sanctum of All is done resolving. Going for the Sanctum of Fruitful Harvest this time, which will trigger during the pre-combat main phase for more mana after they've drawn cards. So now it's 5 damage from the Honden, that being pointed directly at the Rafiq player. curiously. I mean, even one of my enchantresses would be a good idea there, I think. Looks like maybe everyone's playing passively and just waiting for an enemy to make himself known. Anyway, Go Shintai jumping up to 6 cards in hand thanks to the Seeing Winds, which is exactly what I didn't want to have happen. And then they're going to draw even more cards thanks to the Font of Mythos, so maybe keeping their hand empty was a vain aim anyway. Okay, that is really weird. And now the Thrashing Brontodon going on to this. So they're going to take a chunk of mana off them before they get it during the main phase, doing this during the draw step, but I just don't see why you wouldn't just go after the Sanctum of All way before then. You know that you're going to give them cards with the Font of Mythos, drawing another card with the Horn of Greed, and then they do get to make another land thanks to the Dryad of the Elysian Grove, so really keeping themselves in cards here. Still have Nissa Who Shakes the World on top, so they're not drawing any more with the Mind's Eye. They've got some fast mana, even more in the Mana Crypt, which will hopefully wrap up in the board wipe. Alright, well that's pretty good. Go Shintai of Life's Origin coming into play, no doubt going after the Fruitful Harvest. So that's adding even more command attacks onto the commander, which means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They won't be able to get it out next turn, assuming that we blow everything up, because they'll lose mana with the rocks as well. They do get a shrine token when that enters. Sphere of Safety, yeah, I mean, we're going to be getting rid of some really good stuff here. We've got 2 mana held up, including green for the Heroic Intervention that they might have, though. Excellent, but deciding to tap out, that is Impact Tremors now. And once again, that goes really well with token production, so I don't know if they've focused around that specifically. They haven't searched it up yet with the Sanctum, so might have been a good idea to do that if they've got the Skull Clamp in play. Obviously missed their chance to do it here, though. So I feel fairly confident that we're going to be able to land the ultimatum here. It might be that Azusa manages to protect their board. I'm not entirely against that, to be honest. It hasn't been a crazy strong, obnoxious Azusa deck. It seems like a reasonably fair one. And we can always go for Dovin's Veto onto the Heroic Intervention anyway, although I'm not sure I'll do that. So we'll go 100 of Knight's Reach onto the Azusa. They'll only discard 2 cards here, but they're managing to keep themselves in cards. This might encourage them to draw some more with the Mind's Eye. The Rafiq player goes for Flawless Maneuver. Creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of the turn. I'm not sure what the aim is with that. I mean, it's going to save their commander with a Ruinous Ultimatum, but yeah, okay, fair enough. So they discard the Arboreal Grazer that we saw them draw previously. Well of Knowledge goes down as well. Okay, and they are paying into the Mind's Eye there, so this time, Trinisphere. Yeah, okay, well it's not the worst stacks piece. Yeah, really tapping out into the Mind's Eye now, so now revealing a forest on top. We get into more lands finally, got more Enchantress stuff in case the board gets wiped. I think we just go for the Ruinous Ultimatum here. Successfully managing to wipe all of our opponent's stuff, apart from the Rafiq. We were never going to land it on the Rafiq thanks to the Flawless Maneuver. Even if it wasn't for the weird timing on that, they still would have been able to play it. Skull Clamp will have this player draw 2 cards. And now with that floating mana, we can go for the Go Shintai as well. I want to shock down the Steam Vents before I forget, because we definitely want to hold up Dovin's Veto. Drawing some more cards on entry will take us to 8 cards in hand. And yeah, probably ditch the Wolf Willow Haven here. Kemrith's Transformation, arguably we should put that on Rafiq, but I do want to hold up the counter magic here. So let's head in towards Azusa. And they decide to untap the biggest creature, which is fine with me. That means it's a better blocker for Rafiq, although I doubt we'll be able to block with Rafiq anyway. Noteworthy lands here, a Rogue's Passage and a Hall of Heliod's Generosity as well. And a Bear Umbra on the Rafiq. I was hoping that we'd be able to blow that up with the Binding of the Old Gods, but yeah, we can go Kenrith's Transformation onto that regardless. And now the Rogue's Passage is going to be able to go on the 5/5 Rafiq, about to deal 10 commander damage to somebody. They could knock out this player. See if they want to be kind or not. Nope, going in towards us. Oh, and actually it's 12 commander, isn't it? Because it does get the buff, so turning into a 6/6 with Exalted. They might still have flash auras and equipments and stuff yet. because they do untap all their lands on attacking as opposed to damage. And then the Pillar Fort continues. That is a propaganda. Apex Altasaur we did see on top. That's coming into play now, and whenever it's dealt damage it fights. It's going to fight something here as well, probably one of our enchantresses, which I'm not too worried about at this point. Goes after the 5/7, was probably always going to do that after the board wipe, even if we didn't attack them. And then that is dealt damage, so once again it gets rid of the Eidolon of Blossoms this time, and it will be able to fight something after that as well. Currently at 7 damage on itself, so goes after our Go Shintai, and then they'll be able to take a couple of spirit tokens away from us here as well, but deciding not to bother with that, just leaving us with the spirit tokens. I think I would have gone for getting rid of one more spirit, put it on 9 points of damage. I don't think the 1 damage being on there is particularly risky. Anyway, going for the Howling Mine, which for some strange reason has a white border on it. This Fabled Passage finally being cracked by the 5 colour player. They will have 4, 5, 6 mana available to them, so they can get their commander out again if they want to. And they play out their Mesa Enchantress into the Eidolon of Blossoms, so yeah, the Enchantress player really going to get back into it here. Really wish they hadn't been allowed to refill their hand. Gonna make a couple more spirits with the Honden, discard a couple of cards, can be the Enchantress player this time. I really want to get my commander into play. I was thinking of getting down Binding of the Old Gods so that we could blow this thing up, but isn't it just going to target the Enchantresses if it's dealt damage during this turn cycle? Okay, we've got a recycle, which is going to go well with the Omniscience. Maybe we do just look at getting our commander down at this point. We'll go for Mesa Enchantress first of all. Then we can play the Kenrith's Transformation onto the Rafiq, because that is too scary. It's going to deal another 12 lot of commander damage to us if we're not careful. Drawing to Sanctum Weaver, that's tempting for next turn. Don't have any haste in this deck, unfortunately, so can't make use of it here. Song of the Dryads is useful as well. And after that we can just go for the Go Shintai and still hold up the Dovin's Veto. We'll draw another card. Alright, now we're talking. That is Omniscience. Along with the recycle, we should be able to get some crazy stuff going next turn. So we've now got 1, 2, 3 and 4 shrines in play. That will set us up with the Sanctum of All the turn after, because this thing will get its own shrine into play during the upkeep as well. So it's just a case of trying to keep our hand intact here, as well as not getting knocked out to commander damage or something like that. So we'll get rid of... I think it's a bit too late for Sphere of Safety, maybe. Yeah, we'll probably draw into more removal, so let's go Binding of the Old Gods, and we'll get rid of the land as well. Hope that we draw into another one of those. Rogue's Passage, making the Rafiq unblockable again. Got 1 card in hand. They might be able to blow up the Kenrith's Transformation at instant speed. I mean, this is unblockable, so there's nothing we can do about it anyway. 5 more damage coming in towards us. So they've missed the triggers with regards to +1 and double strike. Still get dealt commander damage there, by the way, even though the abilities are removed. This is still the commander. So at 17 Rafiq commander damage, which is a pretty scary place to be. Nissa Who Shakes the World coming into play here. They have 5 untapped forests. Hoping that I don't regret allowing this into play. Just really trying to counter board wipes at this point. 3+ counters on a forest will untap it. Noteworthy that they do have a tech edge in play now as well. And Garaport Orrery finally coming into play. Followed by Gate to the Ether. And there is the Trinisphere, so yeah, we're going to have to hold up all 3 mana for the Dovin's Veto, which we have left up. And the 3/3 going in at the other Enchantress player, holding back the big 10/10 Apex Altasaur, probably against Rafiq. Revealing off the top a Sunbird's Invocation with, which one is it? I think that's the Gate to the Ether. So getting a free Sunbird's Invocation is pretty damn good. Still missing blue mana over here, which is really good. Not sure how much counter magic they would have for our Omniscience, but we definitely want to be landing that. Honden of Night's Reach will probably be pointed at us, but we're not all that worried about that unless we... Yeah, we are actually, because this is going to reduce our hand size down to 2. We do need to actually cast cards into the Omniscience in order to make use of the recycle, so that is something to be wary of. Sunbird's Invocation, a great way to get other shrines into play. And it's noteworthy that they could get blue mana with a Windswept Heath now as well. but tapping that mana down, so don't seem too worried about getting into that. Profane Tutor being cast off the Sunbird's Invocation. So drawing a card from the Mesa Enchantress, the Honden coming into play, that will trigger the Eidolon of Blossoms as well. They have, of course, tutored from the Profane Tutor. Now casting Chromatic Lantern into the Sunbird's Invocation, but they whiff on that, so just getting the rock. The Rafiq player deciding to scoop at instant speed. Yeah, that's not good. I mean, the Chemist Transformation being in play could have affected us there. It also screws over the other players because, yeah, I was actually debating what to do about this player, so they take themselves out of it, unfortunately. I dare say we're about to see some scoops anyway here, thanks to the combo we're about to get off. So we'll point the Honden of Knight's Reach over at the 5 colour player. Gate to the Ether is going to potentially show us some more shrines. That is a Bloom Tender, so we might as well just throw that out into play. And they do discard the World Tree now that they've got the Lantern in play. Sanctum of Tranquil Light, Honden of Life's Web, and Honden of Cleansing Fire as well. We draw 2 cards thanks to the Howling Mine, drawing to even more card draw with Whirlwind of Thought. We've got 65 cards left in the deck, so not sure I want to be drawing too much more, especially with the Enchantress in play. This is a May ability, thankfully. We draw into a Tundra, might draw into Mesa's Sanctum. Do we want to play that? I think with the Omniscience in play it doesn't really matter, does it? So let's just get the Omniscience into play. We are going to draw a card with the Mesa Enchantress and draw into Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, which I don't think particularly matters. So now, in order to get rid of the Trinosphere, we're going to have to go Song of the Dryads onto that with the Omniscience. So we'll play the Tundra, have to go for the Scalding Tarn here, and get ourselves into a green mana, which can be Tropical Island. Anyway, we have to go Song of the Dryads onto the Trinosphere, because the Trinosphere will force us to play 3, or pay 3, for anything that costs less than 3 mana, which everything will with an Omniscience. So we'll get rid of the Trinosphere. Heroic Intervention is nice, along with the Dovin's Veto. So now we can play the Recycle. Oh, that's not good. Of all the cards, they've got Krosan Grip. Do not see enough of Krosan Grip, and it's really, really good for situations such as this. We would have been protected with Heroic Intervention and Dovin's Veto, and pretty much the only thing they could have done there was Krosan Grip. That really screws us. Oh, that feels bad. And the best part is that we've got our hand completely disrupted here thanks to our own Recycle. We can't hold up any protection because I've just tapped out to get rid of the Trinosphere. Yeah, we really need to hope that our opponents don't deal with us here because we don't have anything that we can protect our board with. Yavimaya going into play. We do draw a card there, and that is another land for us. Yeah, so we can grab back the Omniscience with the Go Shintai. We just need to hope that we're not completely screwed up next turn. I'm going to hold on to the Whirlwind of Thought and the Dovin's Veto, I think, and we'll have to discard the rest, unfortunately. Yeah, I really thought that we'd be going off there, but unfortunately, our opponents have another turn cycle to do something to us here. And there we see Kozilek, Butcher of Truth. You assume that there's Eldrazi in any Azusa list. That does draw them 4 cards. If they get into Ulamog, they can get rid of our Go Shintai. There is a Gaia Reach Sanitarium in play as well. And Makokoro also. So going for the card draw with Makokoro, we get more card draw ourselves with the Sylvan Library, which is more stuff to cast into the Recycle. Once again though, the Honden, I mean that card draw is actually the difference between us just straight up losing and not, potentially. Because the Honden is going to be pointed at us, and they've got... Oh, actually, they've only got 1 shrine in play at the moment, which is really good, so we can just discard the 1 card. There is a Mana Dork in play there. Oh, and I think they've got that board wipe, haven't they? There we see a Torpor Orb. Not too worried about a Torpor Orb, I don't think. Yeah, they drew into that green board wipe, so maybe they're just spewing out enchantments and permanents into that board wipe, the Great Aurora, I think it's called. They just played Rites of Flourishing. Yeah, just going straight in for playing that. Floating 5 mana, curiously. I think We bring in all the lands untapped, don't we, from this? I've only played it in the Nissa flip deck. Yeah, any number of lands just put into play. Well, we get Field of the Dead along with a bunch of lands, so we're going to get a bunch of zombies here. Hoping the client doesn't crash. Yeah, got a whole bunch of lands, including tap lands and triomes, so we'll just say... Oh, that's really good, we've got the World Tree as well. So we'll just say all lands going into play. And then would we like to pay life into the shock lands? I don't think so. It's funny, we've actually drawn into a spirit token somehow. Hopefully that didn't take an actual card away from us. Yeah, we've drawn into a few spirits here, which might be... Yeah, I'm really hoping that that didn't take cards away from us. Yeah, they've just disappeared from our hand. Yeah, I won't count that up, but any of you that are interested, we may have been screwed there. Field of the Dead triggering a bunch of times because all the lands come in simultaneously. We do have a fetch to make more zombies as well. And then the triggers here is a Jungle Basin and a Guildless Commons. They do have their Maze of Ith back along with Makokoro. They got the Gaia Reach Sanitarium back, Ash Barrens as well. It's also noteworthy we did draw into the Open the Vaults as well, so... we've got 2, 4, 6 to play that, and then we can play the Recycle again. We got Null Profusion as well, so we might still be able to get the combo going. Don't have our counter magic, unfortunately. Would really like to have that as backup. Nissa Who Shakes the World, they redrew into. They do have 14 cards in hand, only 8 cards over here for the Shrines player. Another Nissa in Nissa World Waker. This can untap up to 4 target forests. We've got Teferi's Protection to lean back on. Now we see a World Breaker. That can go after a land. Probably goes after Field of the Dead. If it goes after the World Tree, I might be forced to go for the Teferi's Protection. Yeah, it does go for Field. I'm not too worried about that, I don't think. Do we want to force them to put more effort into doing stuff to us and make them tap out and expend more mana? Yeah, we'll just let the Field of the Dead get exiled there. Be good if we could get them to tap out into something really big that would hurt us. Make them waste some triggers or abilities, something like that. Courser of Krufix into play. And they've now got God Pharaoh's statue on top. Yeah, I mean, that'll make me go for the Teferi's Protection. Although we could still afford it. Makes it cost 2 more to cast. Problem is with Open the Vaults, it brings the Trinosphere back into play, doesn't it? They play Rampaging Baloths now. Oh no, the Trinosphere got shuffled away. It's not in their graveyard, so don't have to worry about that. Wayward Sawtooth for more land drops. And then they do end up getting landfall on their 2 creatures. Sphere of Resistance, yeah, plenty of stack stuff in here, which they'll be glad of if we're going for Omniscience. We will be reanimating, not the Mind's Eye, Pharaoh's ban as well. So that will make our creatures cost 3 more, and our non-creatures cost 1 more. They did just cycle away the other stacks piece that's on top, so they've got Tectonic Edge on top of their library now. Swinging in the 3-3 towards the 5-colour player. Mirari's Wake for some double mana, followed by a Demonic Tutor. So I'm hoping they go for a board wipe here, because that will be a decent thing to go for Teferi's Protection with. Yep, and they're going for the Dam, which I assume was overloaded. Yep, casting it for its overload cost. They do have blue mana held up, so they might be able to counter. Teferi's Protection costs us 4 mana, as I thought it did. So I think we're okay going for the Arid Mesa, cracking that for a tap land. To get another zombie token, which might be relevant, and then we can phase out. So casting Teferi's Protection before everything gets wiped out. Not the end of the world if that gets countered, but it would be good to keep the zombie tokens in play. And that is very kind of them to wipe all those green creatures out for us. So now we can easily deal with the Nissas. Can't knock out the green player entirely, unfortunately, but we can take a lot of mana away from them. Then going for a Sylvan Library, they have 6 cards in hand, as well as a Jeweled Lotus, taking them down to 5. It's probably a good idea to get rid of this player so they can't interfere with us. And I think we've got exactly enough zombies, thanks to cracking that land. I think we've got exactly enough to knock this player out and get rid of the Nissas. But that doesn't account for the Maze of Ith, does it? So we're going to have to overextend into the Planeswalkers, unfortunately, unless we want to go and enchant a Maze of Ith with the Imprisoned in the Moon. That might be something worth doing. Yeah, we're not going to be able to knock this player out, I don't think, if we want to. I think we just have to get rid of a player here, because we're going to give them a bunch of enchantments and artifacts back. We're just going to rebuild their board for them. So we'll have to leave a Nissa in play, unfortunately. Could always still enchant one of the Nissas with the Imprisoned in the Moon, the one that's left. So we'll go for a bunch of creatures into the remaining Go Shintai player. Yeah, so that is 20 damage going in there. It will be 18 if we send one less in, and that means it can be Maze of Ith. So if they want to keep this player in, they'll be able to do it. So that's why I'm overextending over here. And then all of these can go in at the Nissa mana doubler. So even if they go for the Maze of Ith here, we can still knock out both of the targets that we're aiming for here. Alright, so managing to get rid of the Nissa and the player, not untapping any of our zombies is probably a good move. And then I think even though we're bringing back Stax pieces for them, it's still good to go for Open the Vaults. Maybe we cast some creatures beforehand. No, I'll just go for Open the Vaults here and we'll just see what happens. Open the Vault's going to cost us 7 mana, thanks to the Sphere of Resistance. The Kenrith's transformation can go onto the Courser, and they decide to scoop there. That's surprising. I dare say that we had them there anyway, potentially. Imprisoned in the Moon can't go on any artifacts, but I dare say with things like Argothian Enchantress and Null Profusion and Recycle, we would have been able to draw into some answers there. Let's see here. We got the Binding of the Old Gods back, so we would have been able to blow up the Sphere of Resistance. And that means that we could get all our non-creature stuff down for free. Our creature spells still would have cost 2 generic mana, but I think we could have worked our way around that. We did have an Enchantress back to draw a bunch more cards, along with the Recycle and Null Profusion. So, yeah, managed to get the combo online eventually, just didn't get to play it out, unfortunately. But hopefully you enjoyed this game regardless. That was a really good back and forth. Didn't see too much of the shrine shenanigans. It was a really slow and clunky control game, but managed to get there in the end, as you have all seen. So be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help me out on the channel. You could consider donating on Patreon as well. Massive thank you to the patrons who are already supporting me and the channel. Very much appreciate it. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.